Hey, with your evening story channel, I post new interesting stories every day. Subscribe and click the bell to not miss it. That day had not gone well since the morning. Jacob took a cab in a hurry to go to work, but got caught in a traffic jam because of an accident. And of course, he was late for work. As luck would have it, the management of their branded sportswear store had recently changed. The new head of the supply department was strict and demanding. The day before, she asked everyone to come early. There should be a delivery of goods and acceptance of goods. The sales consultants had to finish before the store opened. While Jacob was standing in traffic, Miranda was persistently calling and yelling into the phone. "When are you going to show up for work? I've got my own things to do, and I have to wait. We had an agreement." And Jacob involuntarily remembered his teacher, who had the same angry voice with the same intonation. And a week later, Jacob was out of work, the influential one who didn't like him. Miranda had a hand in it. Poor guy couldn't do anything else. After graduating from high school, he served in the army. Then, coming to this big city, he worked as a salesman. First at a grocery store, he sat on the cash register. Then he got a job at a more prestigious Adidas sportswear store. Jacob, who came to the big city, dreamed, like all provincials, to stay there to live, to find a good job with a decent salary. But without a specialty, he had little chance. And now, for the second date, he is sitting on the internet trying to find something. But he needs movers, construction workers, managers, and sellers at the market. What's worth trying? At least to get acquainted with the employer will look, having previously called and agreed. Jacob went to the big clothing market the next day. He took some money with him because now he could not afford to dress in stores. He had to save money. Spring was in full swing. The sun was warming up, nature was pleasing to the eye, and the gray city was awakening. It seemed to shake off the dust and smog, and began to play with new colors. In some places, the bright green color of fresh foliage already prevailed victoriously closer to the outskirts of the city where the market was located. The trees were outnumbered by some that were in bloom. They lived their lives, filling the air with fresh fragrance, reluctantly dropping their white petals. Jacob hesitated and slowed his step. Memories of his youth came flooding back. What was it like in a small town? It was like most other kids. A loving mother, a nagging and strict father. 3 years older sisters, smart and beautiful, and the pride of the whole family. He's a bully and a bigot, as his mom called him. But in their house, one summer day trouble knocked. Sister Wendy was ill. They needed a lot of money for treatment. Parents struggled from the last forces, sold all acquired property, including the apartment. Mom shriveled up and cried at night, often hiding her tears from everyone. And the father looked into the glass more and more often, also alone. With horror, Jacob remembered this difficult time. Their move to a rented small room with no amenities. The sadness and pain in his mother's eyes at the thin so little like the old Wendy, who smiled despite the fading spark of life in her. After the chemo, Wendy had no hair at all and had tied a thin headscarf around her head. Only her eyes were alive. God, how big were the eyes on her face? They radiated light and hope and love, but not fear. She looked humbly in front of her each day, hugging them all in turn and asking them not to cry or despair. One day, left alone with Jacob, Wendy asked, "You take care of your parents. I can't look at their despair, read the horror in their souls. At least try to learn and make them happy. Jacob, I know you can. You're very smart. I can count on you, you promised me. I love you very much. Jacob, you're a slacker. I'll do my best. Don't give up, don't give up. I think you and I are going to run around playing soccer some more." The life was slowly leaving the girl. Wendy was 17 when the disease was discovered. But after 2 years of desperate struggle, during which there were glimmers of hope and temporary improvement, the girl was gone. Mom was withdrawn. She needed psychological help and support. But my father got drunk with grief, not quietly, but drank every single day. He was left with debts, grief, sadness, and unsettledness. The son was ignored, no matter how hard he tried. Jacob put up with it for a year until he finished school, and then he was taken into the army. The mother seemed to come to her senses a little, started to scandalize with the father, calling him an alcoholic. He was about to retire. He lost his job. Mom, thanks to the fact that she went to work, woke up a little, spent her son, and even came to the solemn part of taking the oath of office crying, hugging her son. In general, Jacob was not particularly worried about his mother. He had her strong. But when he came back, he found his mother's stupor, isolation, and his father's drunkenness. Then he understood the reason for her depression from his mother's words. Son, we've worked all our lives, but we're getting old, unfortunately, and we only have a corner of our own. My father was given a minimum pension on which he can barely survive. Buying an apartment for his parents became an obsession for Jacob. He left for the capital, and as he thought, no one noticed. Jacob, of course, called and helped with money, patronized and worried. He had promised Wendy, and a real man must keep his word. Now, remembering the events of those years, Jacob sighed how much he missed their attention. It would be nice to treat his father. Again, for this, you need to earn money. It's just a vicious circle. And then his attention was attracted by an old man who was crying bitterly, sitting on a bench. People hurriedly ran past, trying to avert their eyes from the apparently homeless and destitute. He did not hide his tears of despair. Can I help you? Jacob approached with a concerned look at the bearded man. I don't know how you could help me. Good young man, no money. And today I don't even have a shelter over my head. The nights are still cold and my clothes are all corroded. I am perishing. I've been begging on the streets for 2 months now. My relative threw me out. The grandfather spoke in mute despair. Listen, I have a good winter coat at home. Yes, in the house I still have a rented apartment, but for a month paid. Let's go to my place there and tell me everything. As soon as I get a job. That's why I came here. Wait for me here, please. A new job. Jacob said he'd be out in a week. They walked home together. People looking at these two twisted Jacob's finger at the temple. What a fool, they said. A homeless guy taking a bum home is crazy. The grandfather hid his tearful red eyes. At home, Jacob cooked dinner, sat down in the kitchen. My name is David, said a little cheered Jacob guest. My older daughter died in December, and my son-in-law decided to scam a lonely old man. Promised shelter. Good care, but on the condition that I sell my big apartment. I have to pay for it. His daughter was helping him. He needed the money badly. And an old knave man, I didn't suspect a thing. The deal was done through an agency, and the money went into my son-in-law's account. And despite his promise to buy me a smaller apartment, he just threw me out, keeping all the money for himself. Jacob told me about himself, about losing a good job, about his family, about Wendy, whom he remembered with warmth, tenderness, and quiet sadness, about his naive dream of giving his parents a decent old age. Mom's nearing 60. Father is 64 years old. Jacob himself will be 29 years old in a month, and he has achieved nothing in life. Do you have no one else from your family? I asked, dated Jacob. I have a granddaughter, but she lives in another country. She came to Germany for her mother's funeral, paid for everything, and hurried back. Young people work, and she doesn't get along with my stepfather. My son-in-law, they don't socialize. By the way, they don't socialize at all. I'd say they hate each other. Molly gave me her contacts and left in a hurry. She told me to call if I needed anything and not to trust my stepdad. Now, I'm mad I didn't listen to her. So let's call her, find her on social media. I can't stand the shame. And the old man cried bitterly again. I don't have a cell phone anymore. I exchanged it for groceries a month ago. I'm exhausted. No more living and begging. Come on, Jacob, let's find it. My papers and my pension card. Everything in Molly's contacts are in my son-in-law's apartment. He won't let me in. She's my soulmate in the whole world. Molly's granddaughter. babysat her, loved her, and raised her, while my daughter was settling down. Molly lives in Berlin in some networks. I don't remember the word. She said she's registered under that name and there must be a photo. Well, look, I wrote the last name and the first name in English letters. There's the photo. You choose which one is yours. And I started looking at the pictures. Of course, there were a lot of Mollys with that last name, but they managed. So here she is, my Molly showed, finally, David on a pretty blue-eyed woman with an open smile. All right, let's call the messenger now. But I don't remember the phone number. It's not written here. You don't need one. Let's try it. If she's online, I think she'll answer. Hello, Molly. My name is Jacob. Hello, a pleasant and gentle voice. The young woman was friendly. Grandfather was a partisan before. Why didn't you tell me? How could he do it? That scoundrel, how could he? He drove my mother to her grave, too. I almost cried. Molly, having learned all the details of Grandpa David's escape, I thought it was my own fault. I'll just live off what I can. I still got my pension for February. I barely survived March in an abandoned house with bums and beggars. I sold my cell phone at the market. Grandpa, I'll be there. I'll show him that crazy bastard. I'm in the middle of a major life change. Give me Jacob again, and they talk over the final details. Jacob gave his address to his contacts and promised not to leave the old man until Molly arrived. A couple of days later in the morning, the door of Jacob's apartment rang insistently. He was just brewing coffee, and David's grandfather was still sleeping on the sofa in the room. The guide himself slept on a cot in the tiny kitchen, and when Jacob opened the door, he froze on the threshold. Molly was beautiful and sweet, and such a dear woman that he could hardly resist the urge to take her into his arms. But he was restrained and modest. Hello, Jacob. I have a feeling we've met somewhere. Walking into the apartment, Molly said with her eyes, Where's Grandpa, Molly? I hardly saw you either. And he looked away, blushing. Molly, honey. He threw his arms around her. Oh my God, are you glad we found you? Come into the room, please. Don't be shy. Jacob stepped aside to let Molly in. Grandfather, I contacted a lawyer, an experienced friend of mine. He advised us to file a police report and then come and see him. That's what we'll do today. We'll get all the money for your apartment back from that asshole. We'll sue him too. Don't worry. He's got the wrong guy. He thought you were gonna die and freeze to death. That's what would have happened if it wasn't for Jacob. I was desperate. Don't cry, Grandpa. Everything will be all right now. No one will hurt you anymore. Jacob, I don't know how to thank you. When I was alone with him, Molly said, Let's go back to being on a first-name basis. We're the same age. Yes, we are. I hope we'll have time to get to know each other. Yeah, I don't plan on going away anymore. I've earned it. I want to live in my homeland enough. I've been offered a good job at a prestigious firm as a translator. They had a contract with the Germans, and I accepted. I can't help feeling that we've met somewhere. I feel like we've known each other for a long time. I thought it must be love at first sight. You're so beautiful, so dear. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe we're soulmates and we've been looking for each other all our lives. Maybe I feel so calm and good when you're around. You can read my mind. You're my soulmate, so you're not going to say no to going out with me. I will, Molly smiled. After a while, happy and radiant, David sat on a bench near his own house. Jacob and Molly lived in the other half of the large cottage, and a smaller house was visible through a low fence on the neighboring property. There were only 2 through rooms and a summer kitchen, and Jacob completed a room with facilities, a toilet and a shower. Jacob's parents lived there. How quickly did those 3 years go by? Jacob was able to start his own business. Even though it was a market stall, it brought a good profit. And he finally realized his dream, bought his family a house. Molly punished the stepfather. But most importantly, he returned David's grandfather's money. Though happiness, of course, is not in money, in the baby carriage next to Grandpa's. A 6-month-old baby was moving. "Are you awake?" asked great-grandfather, carefully rocking the stroller. "Sleep, still sleep, sweet baby. Soon will come mommy, and then from work will come back. Your daddy, you know him. You're smiling. And then you'll entertain your parents. Your grandfather and I are going to play a game of chess until they call us for dinner. Yeah, Grandma's cooking dinner tonight, baking goodies. And tomorrow me and my grandfather will grill kebabs. It's our turn tomorrow. What else can I tell you? You don't want to be cuddled. Well, let's walk around the garden and see the trees your daddy planted. You're our long-awaited happiness.